What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking 5 big name players that make us nervous heading into the 2025 fantasy football season. So make sure to tune in. If you enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter X at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear it in the comments. Do you agree, disagree? Who else would you put on this list and why? Along with any other questions you guys might have, we'll do our best to answer them all. But with that being said, let us begin. As you can see, we have got the 2025 consensus fantasy football rankings via fantasypros pulled up here on a PPR basis. And let's not waste any more time. I said we're going to talk 5 big name players that, make me nervous for one reason or another. These are all going to be names that are, I'd say within the top 70 players. So guys you're seeing being drafted like in the first 4 or 5 rounds, guys that are potentially going to be starters on your squad. So let's begin. And the first name that we're going to highlight here comes in at number 36 on the Fantasy Pros rankings. It is George Kittle of the San Francisco 49ers, currently coming in as tight end number 3 pretty consistently after McBride and Brock Bowers. And let's begin with George Kittle. So with Kittle, he's coming off a pretty good season where he overperformed from what we expected, and now he has seen his ADP go up because of that. And I get it. Kittle was a great value last year. He delivered for you pretty consistently when it was all said and done. But, if you look at the reasons why and what the chances are that he's going to duplicate those efforts, I think that's where sometimes the math doesn't add up. And again, this isn't me saying I don't like George Kittle. I think he's extremely talented. I think that, on a lot of other teams, he would eat consistently. But with the 49ers, this is what worries me. Last year, Christian McCaffrey basically didn't play at all. And Christian McCaffrey catches a lot of balls on this offense. Like, he completely is going to change the distribution offensively, reception-wise, when he is there. So let's keep that in mind. So immediately, that means a lot less balls for these wide receivers and for George Kittle, the tight end position. On top of that, right, Brandon Ayuk was hurt last year. So that is also something that, has to be factored. He likely starts this year off not playing. We'll see. Crazy stuff can happen. Who knows? But at some point in time, he's going to return, and he's going to become another focal point of this offense like he has been in years prior. Yes, Deebo Samuel is gone, but guess what? There's guys here like Juwan Jennings that stepped up big time that made a trade like that possible. There's guys like a Ricky Pearsall that the 49ers drafted highly last year that are going to be involved in this offense. So it's not like the fact that Deebo is now gone, it just means that George Kittle is going to be the de facto number 1 wide receiver, if you will, even though, again, tight end. I think that there's a lot more pass catchers here that are viable than you might expect. And I think the addition, the return of Christian McCaffrey is going to be what leads, the potential decline of George Kittle, because I would just point to, let's look at the last season where McCaffrey played the majority of the year. So it was not last year, but the year prior. And, at that point in time, we saw some big-ish games from George Kittle, but they were so far and few, from game to game. And that was the reason afterwards, you think back to, 2024, why George Kittle wasn't being drafted as the number 3 tight end consistently, and instead why you got him at a value, and then when all those injuries happened and he became basically the most reliable guy, why he ended up being a good starter for you. I just don't think that's going to be the case. Again, I love George Kittle. I hate the way he is ranked this year. I think that, we should take a step back and look at the likelihood of him repeating some of those reception numbers. And I think then you're going to realize that he's probably ranked a little bit too highly, and I think he could disappoint because of that. But let's continue to move on now with another name not far behind Breece Hall. Number 38 player, running back 12 here per these rankings. And with Breece Hall, look, he was a guy that I really, really liked last year. He was a first-round selection for the most part, or early second rounder. But now, how have things changed? Like, now he is going in the third, fourth round, depending on the size of your leagues, outside of the top 10 running backs. And I think it's within reason. So, first, I will say the ADP here actually kind of, where it should be. But that doesn't mean that, even with an adequate ADP, that you shouldn't have reservations for a player. The reservations for me here is that pretty early on, I don't know whether it was because the Jets were just a goddamn mess and, they were getting blown out in a lot of games when it was the fourth quarter. So they gave their young running backs a chance, and Allen just stood out that he carved out a role in this offense. And by the end of the year, when Breece Hall was healthy, like everybody was healthy, you were seeing kind of a running back by committee. And that's what worries me here. I think that immediately from the start, Breece Hall isn't going to be given every single opportunity. You've got very capable backup running backs here. And I think Allen showed last year that he deserves to be the 1B to the 1A of Breece Hall. Maybe it won't be a 50-50 split, but, 60-40 or 65-35. And then on top of that, you add Justin Fields to this, equation. Fields is going to get his running the ball. Now, yes, will that open things up for the running attack? Undoubtedly, it will. But you're also going to see situations where, Justin Fields is just going to tuck it and run. You're going to see situations where on the goal line, Justin Fields can just take it and go around the corner and score the touchdown. So I think you've got the potential for touchdown regressions for Breece Hall, not only from the other running back position, but from the quarterback position now as well. And I think the fact that you've got some very solid backups behind you is also something that you have to keep an eye out for. And anytime we start talking about, running back by committees for the running back position, for a guy that's being drafted in the third, fourth round, I kind of pause, I take a step back, and I get a little bit nervous. I love the talent for Breece Hall. Otherwise, like if he wasn't on another team, I think he'd be a running back that's being selected in the first two rounds, assuming it was a good landing spot. Like he's got the talent otherwise. But for now, I just don't love the Jets situation. So let's continue to move on here. We're going to do a little bit scrolling to another running back here at number 56th overall, Omarion Hampton of the LA Chargers, running back 20. So I think here we run into a couple different situations. One being people love to, in the fantasy football community, just fall in love with the rookies, with the big name rookies. So a couple running backs, a couple wide receivers every single year. Now, look, with Ashton Jeanty, I get it. Like, Ashton Jeanty was a top 10 selection in the first round, and that doesn't happen often. The draft capital, going in a good situation with improved quarterback play, like Jeanty is being drafted as a first, second round selection with good reason. But with Omarion Hampton, again, sure, higher draft capital, but what worries me with the LA Chargers is they literally just went out and got Najee Harris this offseason. I think what you're realistically going to see with the Chargers backfield is, again, a running back by committee. I think you're going to see Najee Harris, Jalen Warren 2.0. And sure, were there some weeks where you got okay production because you got lucky on touchdowns? If you started Najee Harris or Jalen Warren with the Steelers the last couple of years, yeah, I agree. But more often than not, the majority and the truth was you were pulling out your hair because you didn't know who to start because it was too inconsistent and because like both of them would get what, like 10, 11-ish carries a game, and if the game script was negative, like it would just get ugly. Now, I do think the Chargers offense will be better, so they do have that going for them, but I don't think Najee Harris is just going to go away unless he ends up just being a massive disappointment. But like he's going to be playing behind an improved offensive line. He's shown that when healthy, like he can still get the job done. I think Omarion Hampton is a great player. Don't get me wrong. I just think that people are a little bit too obsessed with making him a thing this year, immediately in 2025. Like, let's say that he will be a great player, but I just think, kind of long term. I don't think he's a short term play. I think he's a play like in 2026. So that's what makes me nervous with Omarion Hampton. Like the fact that I see him like as the second rookie running back being selected, that makes me nervous. The fact that I see him in the 4th round of drafts, that makes me really nervous. So I look at the players that he's being drafted close to as far as running backs. I'd rather have James Conner. I'd rather have David Montgomery in the backup role that he's in. So I'd rather have Joe Mixon. I'd rather have Aaron Jones. But again, that's me personally. Unless it's a perfect situation for these rookie running backs, and the fact that you have to kind of rely on an injury to Najee Harris, I don't love that. So let's continue to move on here with another rookie. Go figure. Travis Hunter comes in 61st overall, wide receiver 31. So with Travis Hunter, again, top 5 selection in the draft this year, but I think being ranked, a guy that's basically going like 4th, 5th round here makes me nervous because, first of all, this is still Brian Thomas's team. Like, I don't think Travis Hunter comes in and puts up 1,000+ yard receiving season. But the biggest thing that worries me about Travis Hunter is the fact that he's playing both ways. Like, that's what it boils down to 99% of the time. Like, we can talk about the offense, the quarterback, Brian Thomas, if they can sustain 2 fantasy relevant wide receivers. But the fact that you're playing both ways and that the Jaguars seem to be entertaining that, even though I think that when it's all said and done, they're going to kind of pound their fist on the table and be like, all right, look, you had fun. You're playing wide receiver. Like, that's what you're going to be the majority of the time. But if they really put him out there consistently as a DB, and even if it's like a 60-40 split or if it's every other series, I think that's going to get to him. Like, not only does that increase your likelihood of an injury a bunch, but that's also just going to get him gassed. Like, the saying that people go with, like, if you have two starting level quarterbacks on your squad, then you don't really have a quarterback. I think if you have 2 players in one, offensively and defensively, like, do you really have either? I think you can make the case here, and I think that's what we're gonna run into with Travis Hunter. Like, anytime I see one of these guys and it's like just athlete. Yes, Travis Hunter is an elite athlete, but I don't know if that's going to translate into a great wide receiver, because that's what we're going to judge him here by. Like, from a fantasy perspective, we only care about his wide receiver production. And I still think it's going to be Brian Thomas, which, on the other hand, is why I'm not worried about Brian Thomas, because Travis Hunter is also going to be going out there playing DB. But maybe I end up being wrong here if the Jaguars end up saying, all right, like week 4, week 5, we're shutting down this experiment and you're not playing DB anymore. Like, you're going to play 1 or 2 series of DB per game and that's it. Then maybe we can have a different conversation. But for now, assuming that he plays both ways pretty consistently, I'm staying away from Travis Hunter. And then finally, the last name is another wide receiver in Tetairoa McMillan of the Carolina Panthers. I kind of wanted to bring him up because I see his ADP going up, and a top 70 player, wide receiver 33 overall, again a top 10 selection. I like the pick for the Carolina Panthers. I get it; it was a need, but do I think that he will have fantasy success immediately? No, I do not. And I can say that as a Panthers fan because I look at this room offensively, and I'm sorry, but you have to contend with Adam Thielen. You have to contend with Coker, who had a really solid showing last year. I would argue even better than Leggett, who they drafted in the 1st round. And like, Leggett's still there. He had an up and down season, but like, he's still going to have opportunities. They signed Hunter Renfrow, who, I mean, we'll see what happens with his health, but I think he can end up making the team as well. So, like, you've got 4 guys there alongside with Tetairoa McMillan that, are going to vie for targets. So my biggest issue here is I don't think that McMillan is going to get the ball enough. Like, I just don't think he's going to see enough catches a game. I don't think the yardage is going to be what you're hoping for. And you're going to be relying just on those red zone targets. Also, on top of that, like, that's not what the Panthers want to be. Like, they don't want to force Bryce Young throwing the ball a bunch because, a lot of times when he's had issues his first 2 seasons is when they've been behind and he's had to like chuck it a bunch and try and force it. I don't think they want to do that. I think they want to have a balanced attack. Like, they want to go and run the ball with Chuba Hubbard. That's why they paid that offensive line along, also to protect Bryce Young. And then just kind of air it out when they need to. We'll see what happens with this defense. They might be forced to, play catch up a lot. But still, I think, like, I wouldn't be shocked if Adam Thielen ends up being the leading wide receiver for the Carolina Panthers again. Even with Tetairoa McMillan like being there, I think it's going to take some time with McMillan, probably again heading into next year once Thielen probably leaves, once the Hunter Renfrow experiment ends, once we have another year to see what happens with Leggett. But for all those reasons, McMillan makes me nervous for 2025. But with that, we wrap up our breakdown of these top 5 big name players that make us nervous for one reason or another. If you guys enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter, @AllDayPigskin to continue tracking with us there. Let us hear in the comments whether you agreed, disagreed, who else would you put on this list and why. But in the meantime, we'll see you guys in future videos.